Welcome back to another episode of the Max Stern Podcast. Kyle Stitch here alongside James Finch. And today we sit a week out from July 1st in the NHL offseason. So that's the start of the new league year, which means free agencies passed. We know who's filed for arbitration, and we have two offer sheets to talk about as well. So a lot has happened in the last week, kind of let between our schedules and just letting the dust settle and wanting to watch the U.S. men's national team lay an egg on Monday. We decided to get back to recording a little bit later than we had originally planned, but I think we're in a spot where we can safely record this and hopefully not become dated instantly. We're recording Wednesday afternoon, so I don't know if we'll get this episode out tomorrow, Thursday or Friday, but you'll hear it when it comes out. And you'll know it's out because you follow us on X, Blue Sky, Threads at AFP Analytics. You subscribe to Max Stern Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, or you subscribe to us on YouTube and watch our faces in front of you talking through this. So we appreciate you listening, tuning in, watching, commenting, subscribing. Probably should check YouTube comments. I don't know if we have any, but if you do have comments on what we're talking about, we welcome them on YouTube or X. Feel free to hit us up in either place there. So, with that, I think we get into it. And our plan is to kind of go back to July 1st, set the landscape, because I think there's a level of natural progression. So, we'll get some observations in July 1st and then kind of through the week and get to current events. So, do we start with the extensions that dropped on July 1st, or do we start with some of the unrestricted free agent signings?
I think we look unrestricted. Um, that's kind of at least on July 1st initially, that's the most pressing thing that needs to get done. Um, that said, there was a lot that had kind of already happened. So top of the market was changed rather quickly a little bit before that. So no Tuck. Um, there's a handful of players that were still kind of out there. Um, And before even diving into specific players, I'll say we were kind of talking back and forth, like, could this be a little bit of a slower developing July 1st? And I would say overall, there was still a lot that happened right away, but even some of the top players have kind of, or it did take a few hours. I know that's still pretty quickly in comparison to a lot of leagues, but it did seem like it was not as rapid fire, like as soon as the buzzer went. Um, but still pretty eventful July 1st. And there's even still some guys out there right now who are notable names who are looking for a spot. But in general, I think it lived up to July 1st as far as how much happened, but maybe the high level, exciting moves were a touch lacking.
Any initial just like teams that caught your eye, contracts that caught your eye, situations like players specifically, or like general categories of players? I have a couple observations, but I'll give you the floor first to kind of if there was anything that stood out to you as far as things you maybe weren't expecting, or maybe that did play out as expected, or something along those lines.
So I'll say in general, I'll start here in general. Um, as signings were announced or at least being reported, it was becoming pretty clear, and we thought this might happen, but we were a little bit low projection wise on a lot of players. And just based on our process, finding past comparables, and a lot of those are from a relatively stagnant cap where now it's growing a ton. We were under on a lot of names. Um, at one point, it was kind of seeming like there were a lot of deals coming in where we were 400 to 500 low on, and it almost felt consistent in that way at one point. With a few random ones mixed in, we were spot on or a little bit further off. Um, one of the ones that was farther off that shocked me a little bit just because of what's happened in the past couple of years with the player was Jacob Trouba. Um, when we projected him, so we released a projection of 4 years at 6.4. There were people saying like, "Oh, that feels high." It's Trouba. Um, he ends up getting, where is it? 4 years, 8.25, from San Jose, I should say.
Yep.
That was my pick in the UFA matchmaking. Um, so he comes in considerably higher than our projection. I'm not totally shocked that he came in higher. I just think there's an interesting way to look at that because the Rangers were seemingly having somewhat of a difficult time justifying that he was making $8 million for them. And again, the cap's increasing. It's not exactly comparable, but it's just kind of funny to see him sign another $8+ million deal. Um, that said, I like the fit. I kind of wondered, um, another one that was considerably high that I'm not completely shocked by was the Bobrovsky deal with Toronto. That was an extra year and about
1.5, I think, more.
like yeah, 1.5 mil more. That's an interesting one for Toronto, especially a team that had Wool moved them out. It seemed like they were clearing kind of a jam in net and then sign a veteran goaltender to a 3 year deal.
Also traded Hildeby to Tampa
Yep.
for Nick Paul.
Yep. Which Hildeby has shown signs of being a decent goalie. I'm not going to sit here and act like he was the next star and this is ridiculous. It's just kind of an interesting use of assets there to pay an aging goalie who did not perform well, um, on a multi-year deal and then move out a cheap, controllable goalie. I feel like if Bobrovsky's anything like he was this past year, you should have stayed with Hildeby probably from a performance perspective and a cap perspective. Um, but I don't mind. I will say for Toronto, I don't mind in general the overall retooling that they tried to do, just to kind of give a little bit of a fresh spin to the roster.
Yeah, and some people were talking about how part of maybe the rationale for Toronto was to provide someone who could help mentor probably their goalie of the future, Artur Eki Yamanov. I definitely just butchered that, and I was gearing up to try
Well,
and
yeah.
rattle it off, but he led the AHL Marlies to a Calder Cup, was very, very good in the playoffs in particular for them. So there was a little bit of speculation that part of the justification rationale for signing Bobrovsky is to also set him up for some future success in the NHL. I can understand that, but I also don't know if Toronto, the way that they kind of built their roster out, we could spend a few more minutes here. If they're fully in a win enough now mode to, or they're more in a win now mode versus why are we concerned about mentoring our young goalie for 2, 3 years down the road, who at that point you're gonna hope that you've still got Austin Matthews, you still have John Tavares for or is he would be up in 3 years. So you got him a few more years. You got Matthews for a couple years. You're hoping you resign them. So I don't know. Their approach in general was interesting for free agency.
Yeah, so I mean there's a level of intangibles with Bobrovsky, and I think it's the mentoring aspect potentially, but then I think it's also just a whether this is the right way to do things or not. I think NHL teams will look at situations like this. Um, Bringing in Bobrovsky is bringing in a cup champion, um, been there, done that, a leader. Okay. So there's those pluses there. Um, and I guess with that, ultimately, just a certain level or a different type of respect that comes with that maybe adds a little, um, I don't even know the word I'm looking for. It's skipping my mind, but just makes it a little bit more credible what they're trying to do in some people's eyes, even though I would argue he might be on the decline pretty quickly. The rest of their roster, Roslovic was I think a good add at that contract, 2 years, 4 million. I liked that signing. Good secondary scoring from him. And in general, like they kind of rebuilt the bottom six a little bit. So you mentioned the Paul acquisition, Brandon Duhaime, Bluger's there. So like they added some new pieces lower in the lineup. Higher in the lineup, at least up front, they're very much relying on McKenna to come in and have an impact right away, which first overall picks, oftentimes they do. There's also instances where right away it's a little too much. So we'll see. I don't mind that bet. I'm okay with kind of saying, all right, we've got McKenna coming in. We think he's going to be elite, and hopefully our top players can kind of get back to being our top players. I'm kind of looking at Matthews just from a health standpoint. Let's consistently score again. I think McKenna could potentially help with that. Um, so it's kind of a here's the core of our team. It's very similar. Let's rebuild around the edges of that. And then even defensively, they might not be done here. That's the other main thing. So they added Radish in the sign and trade. That's probably really good. He's going to have the same role he did this past year in Tampa, so he should produce still. Morgan Riley's the big question mark because it seems like they were trying to trade him and find a new spot for him. Ultimately, from a defensive standpoint, they're not much different than they've been. Um, it could look a bit more different if they are able to pull the trigger on a Riley trade. But I guess kind of running through all that, they're a very similar team. New coach, different supporting cast. I guess one big move is Radish and then being able to draft McKenna. But it's very much so like the top players need to be top players for Toronto.
Yeah, and you missed one big signing, Colton Sissons, 4.25 million.
Oh yeah, well,
That's Jack Roslovic money.
yeah, that was an interesting one. I saw, I don't remember who it was. It was a reporter kind of say, well, okay, Toronto got their 3C. And I'm like, well, it's not really a 3C. Um, that's a big contract. That's one I know we did not love.
No. It
Um,
it was almost like I kind of jokingly had posted this on X. It's almost like whoever was making the decisions took a 1 hour lunch break. In that 1 hour, whoever was given the reins got Colton Sissons and Bobrovsky done. And then new person comes back, signs Bluger to an absolutely fine contract, and then Duhaime later as well. It's like there's two. Duhaime was a little bit higher than we projected, but again, I think fine enough.
Relatively to what other similar players got
Exactly.
this offseason. Yes. Yep.
Exactly. So it was kind of like that 1 hour stretch when Sissons and Bobrovsky signed. It's kind of like, what are you doing, Toronto? And then before and after, it's like, okay, these are all fine. And then in conjunction with Nick Paul, they got a lot of the same type of player, most of them relatively similar contracts. And then they go and pay Sissons 4.25 on a 2 year contract. It just like, what are we doing?
Yeah. That's one I don't know. That was kind of shocking to see. And again, like I think he's a 4C, fourth line guy. Um, and I'm not sure he's really one of the best ones. So overpaying, I don't like that move at all.
So I guess let's stick with the Duhaime and kind of his contract and the general landscape. So you had kind of referenced it felt like we were low on a lot of guys. I felt like it was consistently and we were wondering if this was going to happen. We might have even I don't know if we talked about on this type of episode or if we've just talked offline about it. We've been wondering where the money is going to be spent because someone's going to have to start getting pay bumps. And it became very clear early in free agency that it was the bottom six guys in particular, the bottom six forwards, a little bit on the blue line, but really the forwards up front. Those guys were the ones that were benefiting the most. We saw Duhaime, Veal with, I think, Tampa. Anaheim signed Marlowe from who had finished the season in LA, I believe.
Stenlin got a good 1 year deal,
Yeah,
2.75.
at least that was just a year. But like a lot of the lower lineup
Yeah.
guys were getting both term and AAVs, which again in a couple of years they're probably looking okay on the books. But interesting that that's where a lot of the teams decided to put a little bit more money into their roster construction.
I think it was also tough. So McCarron signs before free agency, 6 years, 3.3. You get Beck Mallenstein 6 years at about 2.9. Cole Smith, I think rightfully so, came in right around that same AAV 3 by 3. And then kind of all these other guys we've mentioned sort of slotted in under. And I think ultimately the McCarron deal, the Mallenstein deal, I think Smith was free agency on July 1st.
Cole Smith,
Um, or Cole Smith, yes, sorry.
yeah, yeah,
Um, was a July 1st signing,
yeah.
but those first two, McCarron and Mallenstein, I think really helped kind of set the market and kind of even before July 1st and all those other ones rolled in, it was kind of the indicator of okay, these guys might come in a bit higher. Like I think we had Duhaime at like 1.8 AAV, and when we released that, fine, comfortable with it. Once McCarron goes for 3.3 and Mallenstein gets 2.9, it's like okay, Duhaime's probably going to come up into the mid twos, which is exactly what happened. Um, so yeah, I think that is something we kind of referenced on different episodes. I don't remember the last time we did, but we've had the conversation about like where is there kind of a salary cap bubble? Where and when will it burst? I think it did burst a little bit. Um, Definitely bottom of the lineup guys were bumped a little, but I do think it kind of helped some of the higher ups get paid a little more too. So like what mentioning Bobrovsky, the Truba deal, there's just more money out there to be used. Um, and in some cases has to be used. If we look at the Sharks, like there's money there that they had to spend. So I think it's just kind of a sign of a like we are very much into a different cap climate now. It is very fresh still. We got to get used to it, but we're very much there. So we're going to start seeing some deals that feel a little crazy, even though very quickly it's going to be somewhat insignificant.
Another kind of bottom six energy guy that got well above expected. AJ Greer, Ducks, 4 years, 4.25. We'll get to the Ducks and we'll kind of table the Ducks a little bit, but that did not help as far as our projections for some of the bottom guys. I mean, we're happy
No.
that some of these guys did end up getting more money than we kind of projected. It doesn't make our air look good, but we're happy for the players
Oh,
who
yeah.
do play and sacrifice their bodies. They deserve that type of money. Actually, those are the ones that really are the ones out there blocking shots, hitting, taking a beating. So they deserve the money that they're getting. It's just it's interesting how those were the ones to kind of push up. And kind of related, Sissons want to stay here for a minute too, because
Yep.
we knew the center market was going to be thin. We like, especially once Jason Dickinson stayed in Edmonton on a fairly reasonable contract too. It ultimately came same value. We had projected 20 over 4 for a 5 million average annual value. He got 20 over 5 for a 4 million average annual value. Absolutely like fine. It happens. So Sissons goes Toronto 4.25, well above what we were expecting.
Yep.
Boone Jenner benefited going to Washington, interestingly,
Yeah.
for I think 4.575 if I remember. I know it was 5.75. I don't remember
Correct.
the okay.
Yep.
So that was we had projected I think 4.25 ish. So again, that 500,000 above
We were, yeah, like three, 3 years, 5.2. Yeah. So about 500K above.
makes complete sense. That made complete sense. Sissons again came in well above where we were expecting. Not shocking that some of the centers ended up getting overpaid, but in the same breath, I want to kind of group Sissons with Eric Holla, Alex Kerfoot, and Scott Lawton here. To me, before we get into their contracts, just from your perspective, just assuming you're picking, not worried about contract, just performance, who's going to help your team the most for this upcoming season? Order for me, Sissons, Kerfoot, Lawton, Holla.
And how much
You
you're
would
going to
want them to
help.
help you this year.
Ooh. If I am assuming health
Yep.
across the board, I'm probably taking Kerfoot, Howell a lot, and Sissons.
So, or order of signing matters a little bit here. Howell was one of the first off the board going to LA. Basically came in, we had projected 3.4, he came in 3.5. So basically exactly as projected there. Sorry, 3.3 and he got 3.6. Was looking at
So you were off.
Kerfoot, who we projected 3.4, got 3.5.
Okay.
Kerfoot, I think, was a little bit later in the day. I think he did come after Sissons, but it was close enough. What was very interesting to me is Sissons dropped mid-afternoon, pretty fairly early into free agency speaking. Scott Lawton's contract dropped I think like 6 o'clock, because I think I had finally packed up for the day and was home when it had dropped. I don't know how you look if you're Scott Lawton and his representatives in particular, how you look at what Colton Sissons got and not think that that's got to be out there for him as well.
I think there's going to be situations where I think players, or I mean, really teams, like there's going to be comparables that teams will just say that's garbage. We can't use that. Um, and agents, same thing. There's going to be situations where they say, okay, that's not reasonable to use here. I wonder if that Sisson's value is kind of one of those. Because very much if you're Lawton, you could say like, well, I'm at least as good as Sissons. Like my worst day, I can be Colton Sissons. But if you're a team, like, are you willing to say, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. Let's overpay you too, just because he got way overpaid. So there could be an instance of that where it was just kind of thrown out like, hey, listen, we think all these players should be relatively similar. There's Howla and Kerfoot, they signed. Like that's where we think you should end up. I also think with Lawton, I believe he got a third year with his contract.
Yes,
Yes.
he did. Yeah.
So I wonder if there's also a level of that too. So I mean, Sissons was a 2 year. Um, Howla and Kerfoot were also 2 years. So there could have been a level of like, okay, we'll do a 4 year or a 4 mil AAV on 2 years, or if you help us save 500K this year, we'll add on an extra year. Like that's pure speculation. It's just a possibility something like that gets tossed out there. And he went back to the Kings, so maybe there's more there too of wanting to go back to the Kings, and that's just kind of how it ended up. But in general, even regardless of order of signing, those three guys, Lawton, Kerfoot, Howla, are probably looking at that Sissons contract and just kind of saying like, "Wait a minute, why wasn't I able to get that?" Especially those other 2 year guys,
Yeah.
Howla and Kerfoot.
Yeah. I think the extra year is absolutely fair. I was kind of also going to say it's interesting that Toronto's the one that gave Sissons that because they traded Scott Laughton at the deadline. He was seemingly a good fit in like the locker room and everything from Toronto area. Like if you're going to spend that money on someone, you almost wonder why they didn't bring him back as a free agent for a similar type of money again. Like this, there's a lot of we don't know everything, and I think that pointing out the third year is a good point, but that one to me, I looked at it's like, oh, this one dropped significantly after everyone knew what Sissons got and came in, I guess, total value similar, but average annual value a little bit below. And I would much rather have Scott Lawton on my team than Colton Sissons from a pure performance standpoint. So
Yeah, I mean, looking at it from Toronto's perspective, Lawton or add those other two in as well. Like, if we're gonna say Sissons is potentially a 3C option, there were better fits at for that role at a lower cost.
so we've kind of referenced them a couple times. I'd like to get back to San Jose a little bit with and this could end up transitioning. So if you want to go back to some other place, let me know. But San Jose signs Truba, as we talked about off the bat, 8.25. Then they also go and trade for Darnell Nurse, who comes with a $9.25 million cap hit. They decided on Nurse over Morgan Riley, basically. And they gave up Mukmedula to Edmonton. So it's not like they got Nurse for free. They're taking on the full cap hit. So they added what quick math, $17.5 million in cap space for the next 4 years for those two defensemen that yes, they're going to provide a little bit of leadership and definitely improvement on their blue line, but also the way that they have been trending the past couple of years, you are definitely concerned of how the of if you're going to get performance relative to, well, you're probably not getting performance relative to their contract, but how much of a black eye is it on your salary cap in the next couple of years? And again, you said it earlier, San Jose had money to spend. They still have money. Logan Couture's $8 million cap hit will go on long term injured reserve this year if necessary and comes off the book next year. But I'm now a little bit actually concerned about them the next couple of years. A little bit.
Well, so they're still going to have over like 50 mil next year to work with. Now it's the year they are going to be looking to sign Macklin, Will Smith as well. Um, okay, in a vacuum, Nurse over Riley, I'm okay with. Um, that doesn't mean you have to acquire either of them. So, kind of looking at it that way, there could be a level of just change of scenery for Nurse could help him. He has kind of trended away from being that high level defenseman that you would expect to be paying 9 mil for. But he's 31. Obviously, like he's getting close to the age where you really start to worry about performance going down. Um, but there's, I think, time there to still kind of rebound with a new team. I think he will offensively. I think he'll have a little bit bigger of a role here, at least initially. The other thing is, I think for San Jose, when they're kind of looking at what their window is going to be for contention, maybe they make the playoffs next year. I don't know if they're there yet. Um, Probably in 2 to 3 years is when we're really talking about them being more of a force. And at that point, we're talking 1 or 2 years left on the Nurse and Truba contracts. I don't know. I haven't decided myself if I agree with this way of thinking, but I think, and I'm not saying this is how they looked at it, it's more a guess. But I'm wondering if they kind of look at it that way. They see, all right, when it's time to like really press down the gas and we're trying to win a cup, we're gonna have a year or two of these guys left. Is that better than having, let's say, 3 or 4 years left of Rasmus Anderson at probably a similar cap hit, if not higher, to try and pull him away from Vegas? Is it, I don't know, I guess there weren't a ton of high level long term deals, but I guess my main point is securing these guys in that 4 year range. It might actually be okay for them and better than going out and finding someone that would have ended up in the 6 or 7 year range.
Should also add Mason Marchment too. They went out and added 5 years, 6, 7, 5. Again, a little bit more than we had projected. There's some feel good stories there as well. His dad,
Yeah.
Brian, was a longtime player for the Sharks. Again, a little bit high. He should add enough where it should be fine.
He's a
But
good player. Yeah, I mean, it just comes down to they got to spend money somewhere.
yeah,
And I guess they technically did not have to spend exactly the amount that they did. Um, but in general, like they could end up, I mean, they might not be done, but they could end up still with even 5, 6, 7 million dollars in cap space, just this season, and then close, roughly 50 next year. I I think they're fine. part of the problem is if they the other thing here is if they aren't spending this money and bringing these players in, then they're not adding to the roster. They're not surrounding these guys with NHL players. And I think ultimately you want to try and carry free agency, but they didn't go too long term. Um, Pretty much tops was 4 years, I think, with Truba and Marchment.
5 for Marchment.
5 for Marchment.
Yeah.
That's still fine. Um, the real issue with free agency is the big long-term contracts that are oftentimes signed 30, 31, 32 years old, which are ill-advised. And ultimately, through trade, they traded for Nurse, didn't have to give up a ton of value. Um, and if they're making other trades to fill the Marchment spot, fill the Truba spot, now you're giving up a lot more future assets that you might want in the coming seasons. So I don't know. I love the deals for the players that they signed? No. Do I dislike it for them in the long term? I'm not worried about them in the long term. I don't think enough was done to really impact them moving forward.
I don't love that they gave up assets for Nurse.
I
Personally, at the full cap hit, that to me seems
so I'll say this about Nurse. Is he 9.25 mil defenseman that they
no.
thought he was going to be when they signed him to that contract? No. Byram just signed for 12 and a half. All of a sudden Nurse's money is looking a little more doable. And I think once we saw that market reset of okay, Byram's pushing up that high, and that's kind of signaling how quickly we're going to be moving way north of 10 million. All of a sudden, the Nurse deal becomes a bit easier, and maybe even just kind of flick a switch. It goes from you might need to attach something to actually that's not going to be terrible in comparison to deals we're about to see.
Yeah,
He's probably a $6 to $7 million free agent
yeah, that's fair. Or an
based off
8.25
past,
Jacob Truba.
well, potentially. But so even right now, we say Truba's deal is crazy, but it's possible in 2 to 3 years, like it really wasn't that crazy. We'll have to see. It's just we're so fresh to the new cap climate that not to go down the rabbit hole too far, but I think it's worth kind of mentioning just how our process is. Past comparable contracts, a lot of them are from that flat cap environment. Um, so just based off that, it wasn't a shock to us. We were even predicting that we'd be low on players overall, and it's very possible. Like the Truba deal seems crazy right now, but in year three, it's like, okay, well, there's guys like Truba signing for 10 now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean that's all fair. I guess it's the mentality of helping a division rival who you knew needed to clear that contract off their books,
Yes,
and you actually give up. I'm not saying Mook Medulla's a premier asset by any means, but he's not nothing either. Like he could be an NHL defenseman.
he is.
Yeah,
He is.
a long term. So I just don't love that you're kind of throwing Edmonton a life raft and then actually giving them a tip on the when you pull them in. Like you're the
Yeah,
one giving them the tip, not them giving you a tip for helping them out.
that's very fair. I think that's kind of yes. I do agree with that for sure.
But they all, I mean, we kind of said the same thing about Anaheim acquiring Truba and Kreider from the Rangers with a similar kind of mentality, and that worked out well for those for Anaheim. in the long run, or in the short term, I
I
guess we
mean,
should say. So it could work out for San Jose. I'm not saying that it's a bad, but I don't like the whole process to arrive at that. Again,
yeah,
they should be fine, but I have a little less. So when Dom from The Athletic always does his off season, like, how do you feel about each team's GM? My confidence in Mike Greer is a little bit lower right now. That's kind of how I would. I don't know if I see the full on vision or of what we're trying to accomplish quite yet. So that's kind of my takeaway for San Jose there.
I'm not panicked, I will say. To an extent, what else were they going to do? Um, and they had to spend money. I don't think their future cap is at all in danger from what they did this year. If more moves like this come next year, I am concerned.
Yeah, I mean, am I concerned? No. Am I a little less confident? Yes. I think that that's kind of where I kind of sit, but it's probably enough on San Jose and their moves. I think maybe we'll get to some extensions unless maybe one other team that scratching my head a little bit with their direction, Utah. I so they trade for Vinny Trocheck. I forget what they gave up. It was not Barrett Hayton, which
I'll
I
let you
thought
know in a
was
second.
so I thought Barrett Hayton going for Trocheck would make sense. Kind of similar type of skill set. You might not be keeping Hayton long term. Hayton ends up getting offer sheet as well, so they did match that offer sheet. But Hayton's got one more year now with Utah, and then is going to walk to unrestricted free agency next year. To me, it would have made sense to send him to the Rangers, but now they have both Trocheck, Hayton. You got the return for Trocheck up.
Yep. So that was the Jersey deal. So it was Trocheck for Jersey, Cole Bodine, who's a decent
It was a first
prospect,
round.
and yep,
Yeah, he was a first round pick last year, but Cole Bodine was so.
yep. And then a conditional 2027 third, which it's just the earlier of Utah or Toronto's 2027 third round pick. Um, yeah, so I mean, fairly hefty price for Trocheck, but not. I think that's kind of in line with what we were expecting.
Yeah.
Just kind of based off of what the reported ask has been for a while. Um, do you want to keep going on why you don't like what has happened in Utah? Because I actually think I'm going to take the other.
Yeah, I got a few more things to
Okay.
say. So, I mean, so send out Paterka, which I can understand. Fit wasn't there. We had expressed concerns about him after he demanded kind of out of Buffalo after just a couple years. So decent return there, but give up a first round pick for Sebastian Cossa. We talked about
Yep.
that last episode. Didn't love that. I don't mind Trocheck as a player, but again, I don't love. I think him and Barrett Hayton are very repetitive for what they bring to the lineup. I like Anders Lee as a player, but I don't know where that fit is. I don't know if they're always talking about making a big splash, getting better, and they just spend a lot of money on middle six kind of players to me, while also sending out. I know they have a surplus of defensemen, but Jersey is I like him when he's healthy. When he's healthy is a big asterisk there. I realize that. So
Yeah.
they have some top end guys: Cooley, Keller, Gunther. Schmaltz signed to a very good contract. You wonder if he can keep it up at producing at the level he did this last season because he had a career, I believe, shooting year or close to it. So you have Schmaltz, you need to have him, Trocheck, Hayton, figuring out your kind of middle two center spots. To me, I would like to see someone with a little bit more, not that Schmaltz is bad offensively, but I would like to see someone who's a little bit more of an offensive play driver there. And Lee is the same player he is, which does not mean he is the fleetest of foot. And I think that that's a little bit. I did advocate for him in Buffalo, who for so I'm kind of countering my own argument back then. But Utah played a very up-tempo game. That was one of the things that they did very well this past season. So swapping Paterka for Lee, bringing in Trocheck, who also is not the fleetest of foot, sending out Dursey, who again they have enough defensemen, but that's going to mean like a Nick DeSimone, Andrew Peak, who they signed free agency. One of those two is slotting into the lineup now. Again, not as much puck moving there. I don't see, and they keep accumulating good future assets, but I don't see the when we're going to start pushing things forward, especially when we have Clayton Keller on a fantastic contract for just
Yeah.
2 more years. Now to me would be the time to have try to make a big move, a big splash, a big offer sheet or something.
Okay, so I'm not completely on the other side as you because I do agree with some of what you said. So I guess I'll say Paterka trade first if you think a player is not a fit or you have any concerns about consistency with a player. Um, Go ahead and cut bait. That's fine. It was actually just in a vacuum, pure value wise, 2 first round picks. Not bad.
Sunk
Um,
cost fallacy. Not subscribing to that exactly.
yes. Um, so I like Lee as an ad from an intangible standpoint. I think it's kind of a team where I think Keller's thought of as a great captain. I'm not saying they need more leadership necessarily, but I think it's a different level of veteran leadership that Lee's bringing in, and honestly, even Trocheck as well. Um, I'm not going to pretend like I know this to be fact and this is what's going to happen. I've wondered about Trocheck getting out of New York if some of his metrics will be a little bit better. Part of the problem with Trocheck, where that argument might not be the case, is some of the years his metrics looked very good. We're on some very good teams that consistently have very good metrics. So we'll see, but in general, I did not like the style of play from the Rangers. They were overall, all around, not a good defensive team. So I'm curious to see Trocheck outside of New York. Um, Looking at Trocheck versus Hayton, way, way, way more likely to get offense out of Trocheck than you are Hayton. Hayton's very much so a clear shutdown 3C. He's way more Jason Dickinson than he is a scoring center. So I think Trocheck should be pretty clear from the shutdown role, where Hayton can now kind of settle back into that more so than being relied on as a top six guy. Um, I don't like that they let Hayton get to the point where there was a 1 year offer sheet. I would have liked to have seen them trade him before it got to that point. Um, so now they're going to have that player not be able to trade him, and he will hit unrestricted free agency unless they sign a new contract. Feels a little unlikely because if he signed an offer sheet with another team, I feel like maybe there's a little bit of a want to be elsewhere long term. Um, To wrap up forwards, I like where the team's ultimately at. In general, it's Paterka out, Trocheck and Lee in. Um, Defensively, losing Jersey on paper hurts a little bit, but they were oftentimes without Jersey just due to injuries. Um, they do have Simashev and Maverick Lamoureux both knocking on the door. I don't know if they're both in at the start of the season or one of them or neither, but I would assume Simashev maybe at least. Um, but two better defensive prospects are about to arrive for them. So I don't dislike turning Dursey into more help up front. Kosa, I'm 100% with you. Trading a first for him was a bit questionable, I think. Um, but we'll see. I guess if they're ready to rely on him quite a bit, and maybe that helps Vizmelka. Um, Maybe they're more of a tandem than Vizmelka playing a ton of games and kind of getting burnt out from it.
So
I'm not
to
gonna
wrap up,
I'm not gonna
you
pretend like I love it, but I think they're fine. I think they did a decent job this offseason.
so to kind of wrap up Utah here, pulling up cap wages, looking at the teams who have the least amount of cap space left, spent the most of their available salary cap. These are the teams ahead of Utah: Toronto, Washington, Colorado, Vegas, Florida, Tampa, the LA Kings, the New York Islanders, and the Minnesota Wild. Outside of the Kings and the Islanders, I would take every single roster had a that's like the players using the cap space above Utah pretty clearly, and then the teams right below Utah: Ottawa, Boston, Edmonton, kind of cut it there. I'm kind of concerned with how they've used their cap space to be sitting in a group of the four clear Stanley Cup contenders, the Washington Capitals, who have made a concerted effort to push again this upcoming season, what might be Alex Ovechkin's last season, the Maple Leafs, who we talked enough about, and then the Islanders, who are kind of getting out from the Lou Lamoriello, a lot of long-term contracts. The
Also, some
Kings,
questionable decisions there, but
kind of the same with the LA Kings. And then the Wild, who are also trying to push forward and be a cup contender. I don't know. I don't love the total cap space that Utah's allocated and how they've allocated it, and kind of lacking a little bit still at the top of their lineup. No disrespect to Logan Cooley or Clayton Keller there.
yeah, I think it might ultimately just be a situation where some team stars are better than others.
Yeah.
Like there's not everyone can have a McCarr or McDavid or Eichel or Matthews. So it's tough. I don't disagree with the idea. Like they would have been a team that maybe should have tried to go and offer sheet someone. Um, yeah, another situation where like what has seemingly been out there as a possibility, versus some potential like big mistakes that could have been made. Like I think they've done a solid job. Um, it's difficult to for me to hold it against a team to like go find more elite players when like they're not available.
Yeah. That I,
Like it's sort of like we always make fun of Seattle, and to an extent, like at some point you need to figure it out, but also like who's available. oh, you tried to go get Panarin. He didn't want like there's like I will fault the team if there was something they could have done and they chose not to do it. But
Anyways, I just that to me they're kind of getting into long-term Minnesota Wild, St. Louis Blues territory where they have a lot of good players, but their playoff ceiling is first, second round every single year, which isn't bad, but it's not going to be good enough to probably get much past that either.
yeah.
So I think offer sheets.
Yeah, so I mean Hayton was the one, so that was New
Yep.
Jersey. That can kind of be a quick one. Would have been a second round pick. Um, Utah matched it. It's walking him to unrestricted free agency. They cannot trade him beforehand. So if he wants out, he's gone after one season. Hayton can sign as of January 1st. Um, is it likely? I don't know. It seems unlikely. Uh, cannot be traded. So potential of him walking in unrestricted free agency seems high.
Ball is now fully in Barrett Hayton's court. He
Yep.
can make the decision. He has all the leverage in staying, trading, whatever.
Yep. Big offer sheet is Carlson, Anaheim. They're going to match any deal. They're not worried about offer sheets, or at least that's what Verbeek said. Um,
Yeah.
in the Pacific. So Carlson Flyers signed him to an offer sheet. Then there's noise that Minchikov is has a offer on the table from another team. They ultimately get him done, but that deal came in, I believe it was a bit higher than we had projected. So we had 6 by 6 pretty much, and he signed 5 years, 7.2. So a little richer than expected for that player. Um, this is all happening, and everyone's thinking, all right, well, Anaheim's fine. They've got cap space, and they do. Cutter Gauthier is a 10.2C, so he cannot sign an offer sheet. There were a lot of people right away like, oh, someone's got to go sign him to one now that tried to help out. That was not a possibility, is not a possibility. Um, but it's still expected he's going to come in at a pretty high number. So Anaheim's assuming they match Carlson's offer sheet, which was a 5 year, 18 mil AAV. They'll have around 9 in space. Still need to sign Cutter Gauthier. That probably can get done, but that's likely taking up pretty much the entirety of what they have left. So now all of a sudden, Anaheim goes from this team that is in a very comfortable cap situation to real tight. So that's kind of that's one of the issues here for Anaheim. The other issue is that Carlson deal, I believe, was heavily front loaded
Not
signing
not oh,
bonuses, or not front loaded, but it's heavy in signing bonuses.
not as much as you would think. Yeah,
Wasn't it like
I guess
39
yeah, I
mil or
guess so.
something?
Yeah, it is. It is heavy in signing bonuses. You're correct.
Um, so I don't know. There's talk people say, well, Anaheim has like one of the richest owners, whatever. It's still a lot to factor in. Um, and I want to say someone had pointed out that Anaheim in general hasn't signed a ton of players with two contracts that are heavy with signing bonuses? Zero. It is zero.
The answer is, so we did this exercise last offseason.
Yep.
The only player previously to Carlson, assuming Carlson stays, that had
Yep.
any sort of signing bonus in their contract was Chris Kreider, who was signed by Chris Drury with the Rangers.
Okay.
Anaheim has never given a contract with under Verbeek with a signing bonus.
Okay. So just right there, the structure of this contract was likely done this way on purpose. And there's reasons to like it as a player, just separate from this. But from Philadelphia's standpoint, this is a little bit of a dagger towards or kind of impacting how Anaheim usually operates. 5 years, I believe, was buying one UFA year.
That's correct.
So not optimal for Anaheim by any means. And then there's just the question of does Carlson actually want to be there? So that's probably something they're trying to figure out right now. Um, if we match this and we're giving him the largest AAV in the league, is this a player that actually wants to play for Anaheim long term? Um, Regardless, this situation has very much so backfired. I think, and this is kind of the third thing here is just optic wise, this is bad for Anaheim. Um, Initially, tons of cap space, not worried about anything. They say so publicly. We're going to be able to match any offer sheet. And all of a sudden, here's one that is likely bigger than anything they thought would have actually happened. All of this happening earlier in the episode, you kind of mentioned AJ Greer and that 4.25 that they gave to him. Career year he had, but knowing now, okay, Carlson 18 million, Gauthier is gonna on a long-term deal at least be significant. Do they still sign Greer to that contract? Maybe, maybe not. I lean towards maybe they just try and try and keep Veal, sign Duhaime, maybe someone just with a touch less of offensive production for quite a bit cheaper to give themselves some breathing room. But yeah, in general, tough situation for Anaheim.
So the trickle down, as you laid out, Mintikov threatens, I'll do an offer sheet, ends up with a higher average annual value less term than probably the Ducks were hoping.
Yep.
Coche, as you said, can't be an offer sheet, but now his representatives could say, okay, if you're not going to give us a contract, we'll just do a year and then we'll go find an offer sheet next off season. And then Beckett Seneca is
Yeah.
extension eligible next offseason. So you got a little bit of runway, but he's going to need a big deal. And you have had better have learned your lesson with Carlson and be ready and willing to pay Seneca next offseason when he is extension eligible, because the exact same thing could happen if you're going to continue to play hardball with the young RFAs. And it's kind of a history that Verbeek has of trying to grind down the RFAs to get the best value for the Ducks. And Carlson has now blown that mentality and structure up. So it's going to have an effect on the team, and it's going to have an effect league wide as well on where the RFA contracts are going. So we had projected Carlson fairly high, 11 and a half. And all of our projections, we emphasize this all the time, are based on past comps. We come to a cap hit percentage. There is no way we are getting to Leo Carlson. There's no way we could
No.
project that
No.
contract. None. So we knew that at some point something was going to have to give in this realm. Someone's going to have to break our model. We expected it to probably be Quinn Hughes and Cal McCarr this summer. Maybe Bedard, probably Celebrini this summer.
Yeah.
But Leo Carlsson was the one. Very, very good player. But now, if you're Connor Bedard, who just had shoulder surgery to put him out 4 months, but is in need of a contract, you're looking at what Carlson just signed and saying, I was the first overall pick. I've produced as much, if not more. I don't know off the top of my head, but his production's been, I think, better, at least box score wise. I'm your franchise player. You just gave Bo Byram $12.4 million, $12.5 million on a contract. It's time to it's I want more than Carlson. So now so that trickle effect. Celebrini is now waiting both of those out, and then he's going to go over top of both of those. And so it has now just pulled up the RFA market. So we know that now our top RFAs are going to be way under. I think the one interesting one is Adam Fantilli. How much does Carlson pull him up? We have argued that Fantilli's probably been a tier below Carlson, Bedard, Celebrini, but he's not a dissimilar situation to Carlson either, where he's thought of as the future franchise 1C. Is he looking at what Carlson did and being like, I want to get in on that action now too? Again, maybe it's not 18, but if he goes 16, 17, that's very unexpected. So it's very much pulled up these guys. And again, Celebrini's got to just wait out the dust now. Like he could have been someone that you would have thought July 1st, 8 years, some ridiculous high average annual value, done over with no drama. There's no way that if I'm his representatives, I'm signing until I see what Bedard gets, and I want to see what Fantilli gets, and I want to come in basically as much above those two guys on similar term as possible. Term is the other thing that I think's now very interesting. Carlson 5 years. Before that, we saw Brant Clark go 5 years. Mintyukov 5 years. We saw Simone Nemec 5 years. Seeing a trend here.
Yep.
And as you said with Carlson, this is going to be true of basically all those guys. Buys exactly 1 year of unrestricted free agency. And so these guys that are signing at 21, 22 years old are going to be walking into unrestricted free agency with a massive salary cap increase in their prime, ready to say, okay, let's do this again. We've been talking about how this is going to have to happen at some point. So I'm still going to do the research and pull the numbers together. I mean, I've been saying there's going to be too much cap space to spend money on, to spend basically then players to spend the money on coming up in these next couple off seasons. We're that dynamic has now changed a little bit. It still might be a little bit true, but we're going to see how many other of these top guys only do 4 or 5 year contracts coming up.
Yeah, it's I term wise, that's I think the way it's heading. And
Yeah.
that's something we were kind of expecting, especially, or maybe more specifically, we should clarify like at least some of the top players for sure. And then there seem to be some more mid-level players also going that route. So it might be an even greater shift than we initially were expecting. Um, I will say I think it's crazy. Um, the the jump to all of a sudden these RFAs coming off of entry level deals becoming some of the highest paid players in the league. That's not something I saw coming this offseason. Even with the names that are out there, That's a very large jump from the way things have worked. Um, so that's very interesting and completely changes just the landscape of the NHL moving forward, that these guys are really going to be trying to come in at the top of the league. And ultimately, they don't have unrestricted rights for at least like pretty much a half decade with these deals. Um, One of the things that's interesting here, what was reported about Carlson was, I think it's being said the team was kind of in the 12 and a half range. Supposedly, representation came back and said, well, can you get around 15? Anaheim supposedly said no. Boom, $18 million offer sheet. It's been out there with Bedard that the team was kind of in the 10 to $12 million range with negotiations. Bedard was looking for the mid-teens, and now all of a sudden someone who pretty much he should be able to say, I should be making what that player is making easily. I'm Connor Bedard. It's higher than he was supposedly even asking for. So it Carlson is changing negotiations that were ongoing for other players. Very much so changing them. The other interesting thing for just this offseason and the whole dynamic about what still needs to get done for certain teams, we specifically have talked um, Bedard and Fantilli just now. Both of those players are restricted free agents. Neither of them were eligible for arbitration. So there's no, I mean, we know there's players that just elected. I think it was like 15 different players.
Yeah, yeah.
All cannot sign offer sheets now. Bedard and Fantilli could still sign offer sheets. So we just went from negotiations, them trying to bridge a gap. Let's say Chicago and Bedard, reportedly a gap that's anywhere from like 10 to $15 million. And now it might be 10 to $18 million that they're trying to bridge that gap, and maybe even more than that because Bedard's likely saying, well, I want to come in a touch higher than him, at least, than Carlson. One thing to kind of wrap up that thought that sticks out to me is when Carlson signed that offer sheet, it was reported that there were a handful of teams presenting an offer sheet. If I'm one of those teams, so essentially I'm one of three or four teams not named the Philadelphia Flyers, do I pivot to Bedard if those negotiations aren't going well? Is Bedard even willing to sign an offer sheet? Ask the same exact question for Adam Fantilli. Now, the other thing here, kind of looking at those two players, Chicago currently is sitting with 29 million in cap space. You'd think they would likely match a Bedard offer sheet. Columbus is currently sitting with $21 million in cap space. You'd think they would likely match a Fantilli. That one's a little more questionable, depending on how high you'd be willing to go for him. But I more bring all this up because it's very possible we aren't even done with offer sheets. If these negotiations don't go well, Simon Edvinsson, does someone want a high potential defenseman? Because you could make Stevie Y in Detroit feel very uncomfortable with a contract there. So like it seems like there's now a willingness to threaten offer sheets. Carlson, obviously, go back to last offseason. It kind of seems like that's how Carolina was able to get Keandre Miller out of New York was just the threat of an offer sheet. Um, Seems like there's a little more of a willingness to use that tool now. And with where some of these contracts seemingly are going, it could get extra crazy in an unpredictable fashion on our end.
And then Friday, if Anaheim matches, well, I guess we'll say when Anaheim matches, does Philadelphia just turn around and say, okay, Connor Bedard, here's your 20 million now. Do they just go down the line? Do they
They
send
could.
one to Bedard? Do they send one to Fantilli? Once Carlson's is unsuccessful. If they're trying to make a splash, I mean, why stop now?
Yeah.
I mean, they could,
Yeah.
or
Well,
Edvinson.
yeah. And it could be Philly. It could be if there really were three, four other teams trying to get Carlson, one of them could randomly show up. There's kind of little rumors about Carolina. Supposedly they were one of the teams in on Minchikov. It seems way more plausible now that offer sheets could be used, and there are multiple big name targets still available for potential offer sheets. And I think the big thing that needs to be remembered here, because I think people get excited, the players have to agree to the offer sheet. It's not a team can just place some kind of like tender offer onto one of these players and sign them. It has to be a an agreement between the team and the player. So we bring up Bedard. It's very possible he says, no, I play for Chicago. I'm the franchise player. I'm working this deal out. I'm not going to do an offer sheet. Very possible
Yeah.
that happens. Um, Edvinson could say the same thing. No, I want to be on Detroit. I like playing with Lucas Raymond. Like this is my team. Like we don't know. So as exciting as it is, it's still a two-way street. Both sides need two to tango.
Think I got one more kind of point related to this that I want to do, and then we'll probably wrap it up since we've went a while at this
I've got a
point.
quick Anaheim thing. Do you
Go
want
ahead.
that before
Yep.
or
Yeah.
after?
Go ahead.
Okay, so other interesting thing for Anaheim where this gets tricky. Um, or maybe not tricky, it's just like concerning. We're essentially laying out they might go right up to the cap after matching Carlson, trying to get Gauthier signed long term. Defensively, I believe this is the last lineup they put out in the playoffs. Lacombe, Truba, Minchikov, Carlson, Zellweger, Moore. Their current defensive group is missing Truba, Carlson, Zellweger. So half of their defensive group from the last playoff game. It is now projected to look something like Lacombe, Drew Hellison, Pavel Minchikov, Nick Jensen, um, possibly Tyson Hines, who played a little bit in the playoffs, and Ian Moore. There's a prospect, Tristan Leno, who was referenced by Anaheim potentially getting a shot, but like all their money's potentially used up soon. Their defense is very different and very young. Um, so that there's concerns about this group not being as good as last season. Just overall, this team not being as good as last season.
Yeah, and that's after they at the deadline went and got John Carlson because they didn't
Yep.
think the group was good enough then.
Yeah.
So the two kind of tangent points that I wanted to make real quickly, I guess related but tangent. First, you pointed out, but I want to be very clear. Jason Robertson filed for arbitration.
Yep.
That means an offer sheet is off the table there. So he is someone that was thrown around for a few days. That's gone. That can't happen anymore. The other kind of point that I wanted to go down the rabbit hole of real quickly, you have to be very thankful that you're Jarmo Kekalainen, your Hughes in Montreal, that you got long-term contracts done with your players before this happened. So Zach Benson, Josh Doan in the middle of the season, and then Hughes in Montreal had announced Demidov just earlier in the day before. Well, it was basically right at the July 1st noon. Demidov 8-year contract announced with Montreal comes in a little bit higher than we had projected, but still absolutely fine.
With where the market's heading, yeah.
So So you have to be very thankful that you're one of those two teams. You got your business done ahead of time and prevented any sort of offer sheet. I mean, Demidov was not eligible for one because he was an extension eligible, but he probably is then looking at the market and being like, "Whoa, I can get 5 years, a 5-year deal for whatever if I wait this out a little bit." And then Zach Benson, if Leo Carlsson went for 18, I'm not saying Zach Benson's pushing that, but could have someone went 5 by 10, which I think would have kept it at like two firsts, a second, and a third or something for like that, like keep it below the 4 first threshold. That makes Buffalo very uncomfortable if someone does that for Zach Benson. Again, as you said, it takes two to tango there,
Yep.
but that contract would look a lot more reasonable in light of the Carlson contract. And now it looks like an absolute bargain for what they got. And again, Josh Stone getting done in the middle of the season takes all this out of it. So if you're the GM of those two teams, you have to be feeling very, very good about yourself and kind of the business that you were able to get done.
There was a question on X. Someone had kind of said about the Carolina guys, Blake and Stankoven, like how much did they save? And at the time, this was before any of this happened. I'm like, well, they easily saved likely at least 3 million between the two of them. Now, after all this, the market resetting, um, you can say everything we were saying about Carolina getting those deals done last offseason is exactly what you're saying now about Benson getting done, Demidov getting done. Because even if we aren't even thinking about offer sheets, just in for those players, just where the market is now headed because of this Carlson contract, those deals being done now are likely saving the teams 3 million on each player a year, at least. Like if those Carolina deals weren't done, that,
Teams would probably have been lining up to give an offer sheet to Blake and Stankoven.
yeah,
Like
Blake might have
Carolina,
been 10.2,
yeah,
but
possibly.
still,
That's true. Yeah.
still, um, it it's still though, like even offer sheet makes it much more hectic, but as soon as a player sees that this is the type of money that's going to start getting thrown around, all of a sudden, do they sign for $7 million anymore? Probably not.
Yeah. The Jackson Blake contract is potentially the best value in the NHL. Almost
Right.
criminal that he signed it last summer. I mean, I'm not going to fault the player for taking his money, but goodness, it's unbelievable how good that's going to look for 8 more years.
I think he was 10.2C the more I'm thinking about it. And like in a vacuum at the time, okay, he signs that. I think Coronado signed afterwards.
Coronado was before.
Was he before?
Yeah, because he got
Oh,
done a
okay.
little bit before July 1st, and then Blake was
Blake
done, had
was,
to have been done in the summer because he wasn't eligible
yes.
until. So Coronado had come down first, so that
Okay.
should have been at least Jackson Blake's market. Well, maybe not quite.
Well,
Coronado had a
so
better season,
yeah,
but
at that point, I think it's like, okay, I'm slotting in under Coronado, similar rights, this is fine, but just comparing like where the NHL is cap wise then to now is it's so different now.
yeah. Well, I think we wrap it up there. Didn't even get to necessarily Nico Heischer, but he got a fine extension with New Jersey, a couple other ones out there, but there's still a lot of some dust has settled, but there's
Yeah.
still a lot in the air that needs to settle. We'll see what happens with Carlson. We expect Anaheim to match it, but who knows again, the trickle down effect of that. We could have probably just done a whole episode on the trickle down effect of that. Our projection air is going to be blown out of the water this year because of that. So
Yeah.
we'll have to kind of figure out. We were trending. We were pretty. You had run the numbers as of July 2nd. Pretty happy with where we were. I think you had said mid 400,000s, 425 ish.
Five. There was someone I was, oh, well, okay. Yeah. So we try and look at the veterans who signed the stupid contracts that
Yeah,
are like 1 million, but if I play 10 games, I get another five. We
yeah.
try and eliminate those when we try and find our true air. It was like mid fours at that point.
So we were pretty happy, and now it's just going to get blown out. So we'll have to. That'll be a recap later in the summer, early in the fall. So think we call it there. We'll see what else happens, but we appreciate you listening. Max Turn Podcast available on all major podcast platforms. Plus, you can watch us on YouTube. Our content available on X, Blue Sky Threads, as well as afpanalytics.com. That's where you can find all our projections. You can subscribe to create your own graphic that we throw out after all signings are done, as well as view max stat. We use that to kind of give the skill set of a player and everything. So we appreciate you listening, and we'll talk to you next time.